Good afternoon, everyone. This is Kumar Data Train with Agile Meridian. It's afternoon where I am and where Chris is, but for you, it may be morning, it may be evening, it may be night. So good day. Anyway, so we're here to talk about the 9th principle of the Scaled Agile framework. And what is Principle 9, Chris?
It is to decentralize decision-making for faster value.
Decentralized decision-making for faster value delivery. So why would decentralizing decision-making result in that?
Well, it's pretty logical, right? I mean, if you decentralize decision-making, you can make decisions quicker. You don't have to wait for them to go up the line for them to get approval, which ultimately means you're gonna be faster, just because you don't have all the approvals and all the other things going on.
Yeah, but what if the wrong decisions are made and I'm the leader, I'm the boss?
Well, but you being the leader, right, doesn't necessarily mean that the decisions you make are going to be right. And the people that are making the decisions are closer to the actual work being done, and usually have a better understanding of what's needed. So as you for the most part, you want to try to get that decision down as low as you can, as close as where the work's being done.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm just trying to give you a hard time. And decentralization definitely does make sense, for a more efficient organization. Yeah, and actually, I recorded a video the other day on one of the X-scale principles, and which is similar. It's really about autonomy and alignment, and this is kind of related to that. It's like if you want teams and people to be to feel valued and empowered and all that stuff, you have to let them make decisions, and decentralizing those decisions. Again, the decisions that people can make because they are closest to the work, those are the decisions you should decentralize.
It also makes it better when, like, if you're the decision maker and you go on vacation and you haven't delegated it down, then everything stops until you get back. Whereas
Right.
if you've done it and you're pushing the decisions down, you leave, the work keeps getting done, the decisions keep getting made, and you go back. If you have a problem and you make a wrong decision, you use it as a learning opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. The time that's wasted for the decisions to go all the way up the chain, and then or the request for a decision to go all the way up the chain and then come all the way back down can be long and arduous, and that's where the word red tape comes from, right? So we want to try to eliminate red tape by decentralizing decisions. And another benefit, of course, is what's going across the bottom of the screen. It enables quicker feedback and more innovative solutions. And why do you suppose that is, Chris?
It allows you to it shortens the time that it takes for a decision to get made, which means that you can go faster, you can iterate quicker, you can figure out what works and do more of that, and very quickly figure out what doesn't work and fix it right then and there, rather than passing the results up to the decision maker, and the decision maker goes through and wants to know why, and did you try this and did you try that? And it's just easier and quicker if somebody makes a decision, the team sees it, and then they iterate on from it.
Yeah. No, that's you think of all the time that you save from having to wait for these decisions to be made by some leader somewhere. But instead, if you're able to make those decisions on your own, on the things that you have control over, you have more time to get that feedback and more time to innovate and more time to brainstorm with your colleagues working on a problem together. So yeah, I can definitely see this being a huge benefit. One of the things that comes to mind is the book by David Marquette, Turn the Ship, where he exemplified this principle, decentralized decision-making, on a submarine, where his submariners, 80, 120 submariners, in a traditional Navy structure, every decision is carried out by the captain. The captain has to make every decision. And he turned that around, right? He literally turned that ship around and empowered his submariners to make decisions based on their local context, what they were best equipped to make the decisions about. And he was able to turn the worst submarine in the fleet to the best submarine in the fleet in a matter of months. So That's what I just thought about.
Yeah, I think back to one of my recent engagements where we had a person that, as they were going through the requirements building for the building out their product backlog, they literally had to go and get designs approved by people that weren't even engaged in the product. And so what happened was they'd get the design done, then they'd have to go in, they'd shoot the design up, and then that person would spend time going over and over and over, right? And answering all kinds of questions. Did you think about this? Did you think about that? And generally, though, it got to a point where these people were, the people that were the approvers just got to the point where they were just automatically clicking. But they were waiting and pulling everything together until Friday, which held everything up, right?
Yeah.
And the people already knew what to do. They already had tested it. They knew that it was good. They knew that they had done everything they needed to do, but they had to wait on that person to make that decision. And it just slowed everything down.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you reverse it and this is what happens when you reverse that and you empower people to make the decision. Obviously, empowerment is an additional benefit, right? And empowerment is it's kind of a tricky word because it implies that people don't have any power, and as a leader, you're giving them power. It's not really that, at least not in my view. In my view, it's more about everyone has the ability to make the right decisions, and you're allowing them to do so. You're curbing your own instinct to make the decision for someone and allowing that person to make the decision for themselves. And quite often, they're going to make a better decision than you are because they're closer to the work.
Yeah.
There are probably some decisions that shouldn't be decentralized, right? What do you think, Chris? Because not everything can be decentralized.
Yeah, not everything, right? You'd want things like your strategic goals. You'd want any, large at the decisions maybe that affect shareholders, right? About what you disclose and what you don't. You probably want that to be centralized. You want that to be up above. If you don't make those decisions very often, you may not be familiar with the context. You may not be familiar with what the standing practice is, what you've done in the past. And so it's usually better on those strategic decisions that you don't make very often to leave those for the leadership, right? And let them make those decisions for the organization.
Yeah. What would be an example of one of those that you can think of that should be a centralized decision?
Like a capability of an organization to be able to, we want to have the capability, for example, to track the people that come to our website and log in and be able to deliver a unified omni-channel message to them, right? Knowing what they're doing. That would be something that would spread across multiple silos. It would take into account digital marketing. You have to take into account the CRM and the sales team. You have to take into account, legal, what can you say and what can you not say, and those kind of things. So that might be an example where you would say, all right, strategically, we're going to go and we're going to have an omni-channel type approach to our customers. Now, how that gets implemented would be something you would could do further down. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, that's sort of a more strategic, it's a directional thing. That's a decision that someone that's working on something very specific, maybe it's marketing, maybe it's legal, may not really have the purview to make a decision like that, or even to contribute to a decision like that. So right. Yeah, that seems like a good place to make those decisions more at a level that's more appropriate. They're infrequent, they're centralized, right? Or maybe it's what database are we going to migrate to, or what major systems are we going to migrate to? Are we going to go to the cloud, or are we going to stay on-prem? Things like that would be probably a centralized decision.
Yeah, things like another good example is email. What email system are we going to use?
Right.
Are we going to use Outlook, or are we an Exchange, or are we going to use Gmail, or are we going to use Google?
Right.
That would be another example of something that might be centralized, right? Where it's not a competitive advantage. And
right. Email is just a commodity, and it doesn't matter what you use. You just have to use something that's going to work for everyone. And if you leave that to be centralized, then the debate could rage on forever.
Right. The CRM is a good solution, a good choice, right? It's a good example that we're both familiar with. So,
right. And in terms of the decisions of centralized decisions, even those, it's not like the leaders are working in a silo, in a vacuum. They should be consulting with their teams and their stakeholders and their customers, and maybe not directly customers, but certainly getting their opinions on what would be the best decision to make, right, before they make it.
You want to get their feedback because you want them to be going along with you, right? You want it to be our decision, not my decision.
Correct.
And that's one way you can do that if you start asking, hey, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
It doesn't take very long to do that.
Yeah, but that's really the only thing that should be centralized. Would you agree? Everything else should be decentralized. Everything else. So when it comes to what's an example? What color should I don't know. Maybe this is a good question. If you're thinking about the color scheme for your web presence or your omni-channel marketing, is that a centralized decision or is that a decentralized decision?
Well, I would say that depends, right? I'll give the typical consultant answer there. It depends on, you would expect that in that kind of decision that you would go out and do market research, right? And you would know if red was a bad color tied to your product, you're probably going to go out and do some research on that and come back and say, we've done market research and red doesn't really work as our main color on our web page or for our corporate brand. You may, and let them provide that input and let them make those decisions. But
that sounds like a decentralized decision. You're going to, get your experts in branding and marketing, go do the research, conduct the research, and come back with a decision, right?
Come back with a decision / recommendation, right? I mean,
depends on how forward thinking you are as a company. Maybe it's a decision,
and maybe they need to go to our management 3.0 workshop on delegation to figure out shameless plug there, figure out what they should, how they should break that down and who's responsible for what, because you really have varying degrees of delegation, right? When we talk decentralization, it can be all the way from I'm going to tell you what to do, which is more your strategic, all the way down to, how you do your work on a daily basis is really down at the individual level.
Yeah.
We're going to delegate that all down.
Yeah. Well, I mean, SAFE does use the delegation poker from Management 3.0 as part of their course materials. So shameless or not, I think it's appropriate to think about how you delegate and how you delegate decision making. And in this case, it could be a very forward-thinking company that delegates completely the decision of branding to the division, department, person, if it's a small company, to make those decisions. So if we are a small company, Chris, you, myself, and our partners, and in our situation, we make our decisions all in a collective. But maybe it would be useful for us to think about how we might decentralize our decision making. But that we can talk with our partners about.
Yeah. Well, and just not to air our dirty laundry, but we've been having a conversation about what CRM we use, right?
Yeah.
How we go forward. And that's a really good example of, some of us feel very passionately about it. Others of us, I don't care. I'm going to do the same thing in either one, right? We're going to be, it's more of a commodity to me, whereas others have got specific preferences. So, delegating the decision and decentralizing it, let somebody else make the decision. I mean, it makes it easier for us to get on, and for me in particular, to get on and focus on other things that I think are more.
Right. And it kind of points to this last point here that's scrolling across the bottom of your screen, right? People with local context should make those decentralized decisions. So in our example with CRM, we all have local context because we're a small company. But for a larger company, 100, 200,000, 50,000, 100,000 people, structures need to be put in place so that decentralized decision making can happen within the context and where it makes sense for those decisions to be made, right? Because otherwise, these companies, large companies, are going to be hamstrung. It's like they're like a big Titanic, barreling towards the iceberg because, hey, you know, they have to make a decision and the decision is not getting to the captain in time. Or again, the story is different, but that's the analogy that I just came up with. It came to my head is, we don't want companies that are Titanics that are going to go crash headlong into an iceberg. We want an armada of little boats that can be more agile and nimble. And those little boats are represented by the people that are doing their different jobs. They still need to be aligned towards the mission, but they can make decisions locally to steer their boat so they can avoid the big iceberg.
You know, I think that the perfect example of that is a multinational company, right? A global company where you've got laws, you know, that apply in Japan. You've got different laws and practices that apply in China. The U.S. is, of course, we're our own beast, right? And then you've got other countries that are engaged. And how do you all work together and do that? And how do you make decisions? It's real easy to make a decision where you could use a term that's fine for the U.S. and it may be very offensive to somebody in, you know, the UK or in China or Japan or wherever, right? So pushing those decisions down on you know, what the wording is going to be. How do we market it to a certain degree within certain parameters? You know, how do you sell it? What laws do we have to comply with? Although those are all really good examples of just at a large scale what you should push down, not being, you know, not you don't want to dictate from, you know, from the headquarters and you know, and just completely screw up everything that's going on. Let those people, you're hiring them for experience. Let them make those decisions.
Right. Makes total sense. All right. We're straying into long territory, so we should probably cut it. Any final thoughts, Chris?
Yeah, I think every decision you make should be, before you make it, think about, should I be making this, or is there somebody else that can make it? And if there's somebody else that can make it, push it and let them make that decision, right? You don't have to be, if you're a leader, you don't have to make every single decision that's out there, right? Make the big ones that happen once in a while, but let everybody else make those decisions because they're closer to the work, they're familiar with the local context, and they'll make a better decision.
Yeah, I love that. As a leader, be conscious of the decisions you make and whether you should be making them. And if there's someone else that could make a better decision, have them do that. And if you establish that kind of a habit, it's going to spur all kinds of innovation.
Yeah.
And as a leader, be ready for some wrong decisions to be made, because not every decision you make now is the right decision anyway. So be ready for it and be ready to support and coach the people that are making the decisions.
Aim small and miss small, right? Start out really small, let somebody make a decision, and then just based on how that turns out, have a conversation about it. And, you know, the next time they'll make a different decision and probably a better one.
Right. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for joining me, Chris. Appreciate it. And thanks for watching us debate this. And we'll see you all in our next video. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.